Is it Duran or Duran? I don't know.
Duran, like Duran, like
yeah.
Duran.
Well, that's what I thought. And that's what's in my head. And all of a sudden I'm like, I don't think I've ever said that out loud before. I might be wrong.
Welcome to Zen Money Monday, weekly conversations with innovators, thought leaders, and entrepreneurial junkies about building good businesses, exploring what the idea of Zen money really means, and how to achieve it. With your host, author, business strategist, and Zen Money CFO, Liz LaJoy.
Welcome back to Zen Money Monday. Today, I'm really excited to share a conversation with one of my clients, a good friend of mine, Harry Duran. Harry has built this really cool business around helping people create and get out into the world podcasts. And we're here on a podcast, so this will be a really fun conversation. But I also wanted to be able to share with you some of the feedback and kind of get an idea of how we at the Zen Money Initiative work with people as well. So it's going to be an interesting money-filled, podcast-filled podcast today.
Hey Liz, how are you? So happy we're able to finally make this happen. It's nice to be here.
It's been, I think, many months in the planning. We finally managed to find time and roll it out. Harry is now based out of my old hometown of Minneapolis, so it's fun to connect over that as well. But we have yet to meet in person, maybe one of these days, somewhere down in the future when it's safe to do that again.
Definitely will.
First of all, can you give us a little bit of a background about how you got into the podcasting world in the first place?
Yeah, trying to figure out which there's always like the long version, short version. I think if I had to trace it back, and I'll circle the points because it may not seem like they make much sense, but I grew up DJing like vinyl turntables. So like I remember like buying like my first 2 vinyl records and learning how to mix and actual needle on vinyl turntables, which is seems so old now and antiquated.
We're dating ourselves age-wise here, but that's okay.
And sadly, they're in storage in California right now, which is where I used to live. And I'd love to have them right now because I have some of my old friends that are DJs are doing live sets on Facebook, which is pretty fun. Help us. As we record this, we're in the midst of the COVID pandemic, so everyone's locked down and sequestered and picking up old and new hobbies.
Yep.
And and then in parallel to that, I started my corporate life in banking. Started out as a teller, worked at JP Chase, E-Trade, in marketing departments. So both financial institutions, but worked mostly in marketing. And then the last stint in the 9-to-5 world was with a consulting company. And along the way, I was just always been a fan of electronic music. So I started a mobile app called Know Your DJ in late 2012. And in early 2014, January 2014, I went to a conference called New Media Expo, which was for podcasters, bloggers, and YouTubers, which itself dates the conference. And then I wanted to go to learn how to podcast because I thought I was going to interview all these globetrotting DJs, and then quickly realized how hard it was going to be to track them down. Although I should try to bring it back now because they're all stuck at home. So
that's right.
Now would be the best time. But what I noticed, I was just attending a lot of the podcasting sessions. Pat Flynn was there, Amy Porterfield, Cliff Ravenscraft, some of these like people that I'd been following for a couple of years. And I had this brainstorm idea of this, I considered myself a podcast junkie. Someone mentioned the term. I came back from the conference, the domain was available. So I started a show called Podcast Junkies, and it's a bit meta. It's a podcast where I interview other podcasters. So that was 2014. Fast forward, as of April this year, it's the 6-year anniversary, and we just released, I think, episode 220-ish. Just went live this week. Yeah, 221 just went live.
Nice.
And so it's been a fascinating journey, and it was my foray into the world of podcasting. And I always made a point to do face-to-face. At the time, it was Skype with call recorder, because I realized like no one knew who I was in the world of podcasting. And I didn't want to waste this hour-long, really in-depth conversation I had with someone. There's something about connecting face-to-face, Liz, which I'm sure you can attest to in the conversations you had, that's a bit different than if we were to just do the audio version of this. There's something about the body language and connecting with another human being, so that when I would start to go to the conferences, we would see each other, we would recognize each other, obviously, because it was like, hey, Harry, thanks for having me on your show. And it was really great. I had a really good time. And what happened is I just started to build up my network within the world of podcasting. A year into that, I found a business coach that I've been working with ever since. His name is Taki Moore. The program is called Black Belt. He helps coaches. He's a coach of coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot about the world of digital marketing. I continuously use the metaphor or analogy, I always get those two mixed up, of Narnia, like when you go through the closet and the wardrobe and you come out, and that was me coming out of the 9 to 5 world and into the world of landing pages and digital marketing and sales copy, and I was meeting all these like entrepreneurs, high 6-7 figure entrepreneurs, some 8, just were building like remote businesses, and it was just fascinating, and a lot that I didn't know, and I felt like I was swimming in the deep end, but it was very, very helpful for me. I constantly quote Jim Rohn, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And I really just realized the importance of not only building your network, but surrounding yourself with people who are where you want to be, and challenging yourself, and pushing yourself to learn more, so you can feel like you can swim at that level. And thankfully, I'm honored to call a lot of these people now my friends, and I can reach out to them if I have questions, and there's some power to having that sort of brain trust around you. And we've experienced it through the Archangel Network as well, and I know it's something you can attest to, just the power of having a wide variety of people who are experts in what they do, and having the ability to just learn from them. And so when I was in that group, when I first got started, that's where the idea for FullCast came in. And so 2015, I started FullCast. I think of it as short for full service podcast production. So it's a done for you podcast service where we handle all aspects from launch to the production and then the subsequent marketing of a show. And I quickly realized that my specialty was in allowing my clients to focus on their genius, which for me, which the way I see it is really just record the most compelling content you can, whether it's solo or with a guest, and then let us just handle all the rest. And so I've been doing that since 2015. I've had the pleasure of working with some great brands, working with yourself on the launch of the show, and companies like K-Swiss. We worked with Olympic gold medalist for the launch of her show, and just been really excited about helping brands and companies, find their voice. I have a mission to help 1 million people find their voice. And so that's what drives me and keeps me going.
Yeah, I think what's really cool about what you have built is you have a really interesting clientele base. It's, everything from kind of corporate messaging where people are sort of you wouldn't think necessarily beginning in the podcast space, but the podcast space is big enough now that even recording podcasts for their employees, these multi-billion-dollar companies wanting to do that.
Yeah.
And then you have the one-off, like, I'm just going to find a microphone and stick it in my laptop and see what happens, kind of stuff. And I imagine that's pretty fun creatively. The other thing I would say that I think is a testament to your dedication to your business is back to what you were saying in terms of connecting with all these people that you now consider friends. That's because you've consistently shown up and then just been wildly curious about how you can bring value and hearing what people need and basically, creating your business accordingly. And you didn't necessarily come in with I need a model and I'm going to fit you to it, Mr. Potential Client, which we sometimes do accidentally, especially in the beginning.
Yeah. I think what I realized is when early on, some of my first clients, they would ask me like, how do I create like graphics, or how do I create social posts? And I realized like that was the wrong question. I was like, that's not what you should be asking me. Granted, if you are like a hobbyist and you want to learn like I did that first year, how do I do it all myself? Those are important questions to ask. And I do suggest every now and then, like if you do want to learn the basics of it so you know what it is, but then quickly realize the example my coach uses is to find the who as quickly as possible, who can help you with what you need. So I think that's been helpful to try to guide clients there, understanding this concept of opportunity cost, like what's an hour of your time worth, and if it's speaking to your ideal prospects, like if you're given an hour of an audience in front of your ideal prospect, that's potentially worth thousands of dollars to you if you can close that. So
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of it in those terms.
Well, and I think that we all have to decide on our own very cognizantly which pieces of this entrepreneurial business building puzzle is it worth it for me to do myself versus trusting that spending some money is going to be worthwhile to get, higher level service and have ideas brought to me that I wouldn't necessarily know or how to come up with on my own. That's actually how we started working together as well. We were like, well,
Yeah.
I can input my stuff, but I don't know if it's right. And maybe we can take a look. Right. And so, from your perspective, before we started working together, when you look back on that, where was your business at? What were you having issues with from a financial standpoint?
Wow. I mean, when we talk about your genius, accounting is not mine.
None of us are born understanding double entry bookkeeping, but somehow we think we're supposed to.
Yeah, and it's funny when I always use the example of this website thing that I needed fixed, and I was in the sidebar trying to fix, it was like CSS or HTML, and it took me like basically half the day to just like, what the heck is going wrong? And it was pulling my hair out, and I finally like broke down and had a web development friend, I paid him to help me. He literally fixed it in like 15 minits. I was like, whoa. I was like, okay, I get it. That's your genius. Like
that $50 was totally worth my time.
Yeah. And so I think for me, part of the challenge was, I think for me, is if I think back to it, I mean, my father was really into anti-credit cards, and he owned like 4 homes. So he's really like had his head, I can't say that I didn't get the message from him about the importance of managing credit and managing your finances, but it just didn't sink in. And
let me break you in there for a second. Do you remember having actual conversations about money management with your dad though, or was it more like, I expect you to learn through osmosis by watching?
Well, no, he was adamant he was definitely like, about the importance of, not running up big credit. And I think we did talk about it a couple of times, but I think it's that preparation. And I think about the moment, like I received that first credit card in college, like
always college, man.
Handing them out like they're chocolate bars, and without any like grounding or education, because it's not taught. I mean, it probably needs to be taught in like grade school and earlier, just the concept of like saving and spending and what the function of credit is, as opposed to like it's an extra piggy bank. And so if I had to point to something or a pivotal moment, Liz, I think it's that. And then just from there, just kind of took various permutations, and just was spending and not understanding like the importance, and definitely like from there on affected my credit. And I was able to get back on track some years ago, but even then, with the challenges of building my business, I sort of went back to the other side of that. So yeah, it's something that I'm just still struggling with. And as I was building my business, I literally was just worried about cash, and I was or accessibility to cash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I cashed out my 401k. I mean, it's like for me, and the kids don't try this at home, but I think when I saw how much I had in there, Liz, I was like, that's not my retirement plan. I was like, there's no way that's going to make it. And for me, just as an entrepreneur, I have to build my own retirement plan. Whatever retirement looks like, I don't plan on retiring anyway, but I knew that that's what I needed to do. And it was a kind of a burn the boats mentality. And I was just like, whatever it takes for me to build this. And so, and my finances suffered. And when it came to accounting, I mean, I was smart enough to separate the business from the personal. I did incorporate, but I just basically it was kind of like ignoring the accounting aspect of it. My taxes were delayed, and this is some of the stuff you started helping me with. But yeah, I mean, I was not the IRS was definitely not that they weren't a friend, but I mean it's something that we sort of have that love-hate relationship.
Well,
And
I think we found that actually you can get some pretty kind people who are actively think of
yes,
the IRS as being a like the doors clang shut and like very militant. And the reality is
yeah,
there's lots of people who are trained very well with great customer service who really just want to help get this sorted out. They'd rather talk to us than not, you know?
yes,
So that's the silver lining there. And yeah, the kids don't try this at home thing. The reality is anybody listening, you know, it's so easy. I get to sit in this position where I see this story over and over again, which is part of the reason I wanted to talk to you because you're willing to be honest about this, which I
yeah,
appreciate. Um, you know, we in the States, especially, and or North America in general, it's so easy to get into credit, into like high levels of debt in a blink of an eye because there's so much accessibility. I mean, they don't do this in Europe. In Europe, you know, you basically, you know, get a credit card that maxes out at 4,000 euros and that's it. You know, like if you need more for your business, you
interesting,
need a loan and you need all of this backing
yeah,
and it seems restrictive to those of us on this side of the ocean, but the reality is it keeps people from getting into really significant financial, you know, problems as well. So it's lots of us have dealt with this in one way or another, and the reality is it's super easy to focus on the building part and the meeting all those people part. And sure, I'll just throw down the credit card and go to that next event because it'll put me in a room with the right people. And, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know that my conversation is just around let's be conscious about that as opposed to having it
yeah,
catch us up short later.
yeah. Yeah, and so just to kind of wrap up, to just before we met, thankfully we got connected at the right place and at the right time because it was at the point where it was just going to be like the demise of my business. And
It was right
yeah, I
around this
think
time of the year, actually. I think it's around tax time, which is usually what
yeah,
triggers people. They're like, oh
yeah.
shit, taxes. I should maybe do something here.
And you know, I was trying to weigh like the cost of having someone like you help me, and I think at the we were able to make something work where we could start working together. And I think as that started happening, I think I just felt like you were put in my path for a reason, and it started to feel like a weight was slowly starting to be lifted off of my shoulders as we started having more and more conversations. And I quickly came to realize like this is obviously your zone of genius, and being able to partner with someone when they're working in their zone of genius is something that is really, it's really a good feeling when you have someone like that in your corner.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel that way when I get to work with people who are helping me grow my business too, like you did.
Yeah.
But I very much appreciate that. What I'm just curious what it was from your perspective about my style or what we were talking about doing together that was attracted to you. Because I know that you know tons of people who do financial support work, who do bookkeeping, accounting, help you with taxes.
Yeah, I think it's the nature of the group that we were part of. Like everyone there is really like heart-centered, which I definitely align with. I'm a profoundly spiritual person. Probably the Zen aspects call to me a lot. I studied Buddhism, so I'm very familiar with the benefits of an approach like that, and anything that combined finances with Zen, which seems like an oxymoron. But anyone that can make that combination work, it was definitely something that was appealing to me. And I think it's just your demeanor and also how you made me feel, because it's an embarrassing topic for a lot of entrepreneurs to talk about. It's when you open up the kimono and you just start showing people like all that stuff, all the dirty laundry. And I think your approach and how you saw it just very objectively, and like, okay, that's what it is, and this is what needs to happen, and this is how we clean it up, and this is how we're going to do it step by step. And it just a lot of hand holding along the way, and a lot of just support and just making me feel and understand that I wasn't wrong for being where I was. It's just an accumulation of bad decisions. But like everything else, with with time, like and a little bit of patience, anything else can be corrected and be placed on the right path.
Yeah, I like to say, I think there's so much stress about this, even just at a granular, like bookkeeping level, right? Many people are afraid of like, I'm so scared I'm going to make a mistake, or in a position like you were in, which is, I feel like I've made so many mistakes and now it's this big snowball. But the
Yeah.
reality is, while we can't unwind the decision, like from an accounting standpoint, there's really not anything that can't be fixed, right? Like we can always
Hmm.
go back and restate our taxes if they were done improperly, which I'm happy and hopefully this is okay to share, but like we were able to go back and see that
Yeah.
your tax work had been done inaccurately. Your books
Hmm.
weren't as clean as they should have been, which meant that the government thought you owed a lot more than you actually did.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a fun outcome to be able to go, oh, wait, I don't own tens of thousands of dollars to the government in back taxes. I only owe this much, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's from my perspective, a fun thing to be able to help somebody not only realize, but come to a position where you're feeling a lot more, in control of that than you were
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely helped take a lot of weight off my shoulders, and trying to instill a couple of best practices. But I think also quickly realizing that I do need the ongoing support because it still continues to be just the bane of my skill set, or my collection of things that I need to get done. But it usually ends up being, as you might, it's probably a similar story to other clients, but last on the list, it's like, oh, let me do all these other 20 things for my business. And then, by the way, let me get caught up on a couple of months worth of
Right. Yeah.
reconciliations.
We always have the best intentions to have our, money date on Fridays and we'll carve out time. And then,
Yeah.
something always supersedes it. And I think there's always a real reason for that, primarily because we want to be doing other things. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Growing
So
the
it's the same thing
business.
with,
Yeah.
it's the same as with exercise, right? If you're
Yeah.
in that habit of like, ugh, I don't want to put on my sneakers today, then, or I should say tennis shoes and get back to my roots. Come on.
Yeah.
But right, if you're just not feeling it, you will find something else to do besides that thing that was on your list, and finance is
Yes.
definitely one of those things. And I just
Which I've
believe
been,
that
which I've done.
a little bit of time and a little bit of focus can go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is different now over the last year since we've been working together?
I think just understanding uh, the discipline that's involved, the importance of how I think about finances, how I think about cash flow, how I think about pricing. We've talked about pricing as well, making sure that I've upped my pricing since we started working together, and service agreements. You've helped with that as well. I think like just the organization about how I communicate with prospects, and then potential clients as we're in the process of starting that relationship, working together, the importance of getting that service agreement in place, holding people accountable to 12-month commitments, and all those things just give me more peace of mind because I can understand and plan better when I know that recurring retainers coming in every month, because it's something that the client and I have agreed to. And then I think getting out of my own head, because I have all these preconceived notions about what a prospect will think if I send them this long contract. Am I going to scare them
Mm.
away? Like, I just want to get that money in my account as quick as possible. Here's the invoice, pay me now, because because you're just like, you're worried that they're going to change their mind, buyer's remorse, all that sort of stuff. And just, I think, reminding me and helping me put in place some of these best practices with proper onboarding. We do a good job of onboarding when it comes to the procedural stuff and the technical stuff, how we walk clients through, launching a show. But there's some important financial housekeeping that needs to happen as well. And I think you've helped me understand why that's important and how to make sure that that's a continuous part of what we do as just a regular course of business. And then understanding and continuing to take a look at what we do on a day-to-day basis to make sure the work that we're doing is we're actually making money as well. So that's been incredibly helpful.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Yeah, I'm always impressed by how much our bare brain can tell us that this isn't an area that if we look at it or talk to a client about it too much, they're going to flee.
Yeah.
Because in reality, if we have a really great contracting payment cycle conversation, it actually allows our clients to think more highly of us and be more invested in what we're doing because we're showing up officially, as opposed to kind of like, just pay me so we can get to work. Like that
Yeah,
dynamic always involves people not paying the second invoice or ghosting us, or I don't know.
yeah,
There is some energetic piece to that, I think.
yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So where does the podcasting world go for you from here? Like I know we've talked a lot about sort of shifting client base and who's available and kind of where the work is. Given that we're in the middle of COVID, have you seen any shifts in people's interest in the podcasting area?
I don't think I've seen any decrease in interest. There's been a slight uptick for me, and I think part of it is a testament to just my ability to continue to work on my network.
Mm.
And it's something that I've been doing for probably the past 2 years. Just been more conscious of it, and even more so in the last year. I spent about an hour on LinkedIn every morning.
Oh yeah, you have the best. You should share this because you have the most incredible. Speaking of, you do have the ability to focus on very detailed things when you want
Yeah,
to. For being
yeah,
a very big picture, like I got an idea, let's move on it because you are very
yeah.
much a quick start. But Harry's been doing this thing for the last year that takes so much dedication and it's really reaping rewards. Would you share what you do on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, it's a multi-pronged approach. One of the things that I started doing early on, and this is someone anyone can do, is we constantly are receiving notices to connect from people that we have no idea who they are, right? And typically in the past, you would just ignore them or just blindly accept them. And I like being conscious of why we do the things we do, and I've thought about that from like, why does this connection matter, and why, if I'm going to take the time to connect, like how can I make sure that it makes the best use of their time and my time. So one of
And
the things I do,
not just add another number to your like,
yes,
I'm friends with 100 million people. Like not
exactly,
many of them.
exactly,
It's just a
and that's what
metric that's
happens.
meaningless, right?
Yeah, and that's what happens on Facebook, and that's what happens on Twitter. But I think because of the nature of the ability for LinkedIn to be a very strong source of new clients for me, and it has been. I've actually gotten people through this process. But one of the first things anyone can do, is the minute someone asks me to connect, I say I accept the connection, and then immediately I send them a message, and I have a copy here, and you can include this in the show notes as well. It
Okay.
says, hey Liz, thanks for reaching out. May I ask why you clicked the connect button? I've been making an effort lately to ensure the relationships I'm building here are adding value for both of us, and I'm always curious as to how people came across my profile. Hope you're having a great week. Hope you had a relaxing weekend. Just changes as appropriate. I've recently added, I hope you and your family are safe, because I just don't want to be tone deaf to what's happening. So that's a really easy one. But then I've got now like a whole slew of ways. And so that's the people that reach out to you and connect blindly. But then I do have, like, I think about also how I can continue to expand my reach. So every day I do have the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is the $60 a month version, because I make it a point to reach out to about 40 to 50 people. I think 50 is about the max. I try to keep it just under.
So that you don't get like cut off and told that
Yeah,
you're being spammy.
yeah, they'll stop you, but you do need the LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do that. And I just pick different groups of folks to go to connect with. So one of the examples is, since I'm new to the Minneapolis area, I create something for Minneapolis, and I can do a search. You search for Minneapolis and you search for marketing director, CMO title, whichever you think is in the ballpark of what your avatar is. And then here's the key: you make sure you change it to people so you can see actual names, and then you change the connections to second.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then what you'll lose is the ability for them to see how you're connected, how many mutual connections you have. And that's really important, because if it's too far away and then you have zero connections, then they'll be like, oh, this is just a blank outreach. So then that one, I just changed that, and again, what you'll notice here is I'm just adding myself, my personality, and I'm showing them that it's another human being who has a sincere desire to connect. And so one of them would be, hey Liz, I hope you and your family are safe during these interesting times. I relocated to Minneapolis last year from LA via New York, and I'm setting aside a few minutes every day to expand my connections with local marketing professionals. and I send 40 to 50 of those a day, and it's old school. Like it's literally like pen, paper, tick. Like some of that stuff can't be done digitally, or just when there's a benefit of like having like the tactile. Like
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've got people who we work with who will list everything. We could absolutely be doing everything in a spreadsheet somehow digitally, but it works for them to write everything out. That's how they like really lock into their numbers, is by creating lists in a notebook with a pen. And, there's something about the physicality of that's very different than just typing away on your laptop.
Yeah, and I was having a discussion with someone in another group. I'm in Alex Sharfin's group. He's in Archangel as well. And he's a really big fan of doing this daily planning worksheet. So it's what's your intention for today? Where was I uncomfortable yesterday? What's the list of to-dos? So it's really interesting. And someone pointed out, they did a little Google search, and the number of bones that are put into motion when you're writing is like 1,000 in terms of like all the ways your hand moves, as opposed to just a couple when like you're typing. So I thought
interesting.
It was really fascinating.
It's like it takes, whatever, that the frown is
yes,
hard, harder on your body, whatever. Then it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile.
Yeah. And so the part of that outreach, and if you notice some of if you think about it as a framework, I'm connecting to local people in my town. So that's one of the first things you can do. Say, hey, I'm in your town, let's connect, and what's interesting now, this is the best time to build up your network, because everybody's sequestered, everybody's got cabin fever. There's no more, let's have a coffee. There's no more public networking events. Like I've even sat in on BNI. I've been invited to like the BNI network, and typically that's something where you have to be invited and go in person. They can't.
Yeah, you go in person at 7 a.m. to have coffee, and
So I was invited to a couple, and I got to meet 20 local entrepreneurs. But then I also throw in the fact that I lived in LA, lived in New York, and just people will connect to one of those things. So the more personal things you can do and add in, people are like, oh, they'll resonate and connect with that. And I've had responses back like, oh, it's welcome to Minneapolis, and like, thanks for reaching out, and wow, that was such a personal note. No one ever sends anything like that. The only reason I replied is because you put that paragraph in there. And I'll tell you, Liz, like I've had 2 that come to mind, clients that have signed up as a result of this effort, because I've started a conversation with them. I went to go meet one in person, signed up as a client. Another one, it just took one phone call. And the other thing, here's the other little hack. If you'll notice on my LinkedIn profile, I've changed my last name, so it says Harry Duran, podcast strategist. And so when people look at my name or they see the connection, I don't even have to mention podcasting, because it says it in my profile. So I can just make a genuine like request to
person
connect,
person
to person, but they'll see that in my profile name. I used to have an emoji there. Apparently that's not good. Just for the algorithm, because I geek out on this stuff. So, and inevitably they're like, oh, podcast strategist, what's that? Oh, I've been thinking about this podcast. Oh, I need help with my podcast. And then I just start the funnel there. I'm like, well, I've got a free lead magnet. I'll send you my ultimate podcast launch game plan. And they're like, oh yes, please. And then immediately, like, if you take a look through it, and if you want to have a follow-up, let's have a free chat. And so it just starts that process. But I've been using Copper as my CRM to track all these, because the follow-up ability.
The volume is huge. If you're reaching out to 40 people a day, it adds up quickly.
It requires discipline, because essentially what you have to do is move them quickly to Copper as a lead, which is a great CRM. Copper has a great interaction with Google Suite. So if you're a big Google Suite user, I push everyone to Copper, because the integration is so smooth. You could be in Gmail and adding people to Copper while you're in your Gmail.
The secret life of Harry Duran is that he's such a tech nerd that he has hacks and like has vetted all of the systems and all of the things. So if anyone has questions about that kind of stuff, he's really good at that too.
And the other thing I've done is seeded the handout for your audience that they're going to hear, but they have to listen to this whole episode. So we'll open loops. I love open loops.
Yeah. The loops and the loops. If you think back to where you were, say, 18 months ago, around your business and where it was headed, what advice would you give somebody, knowing what you know now?
I think to be realistic about how serious you are about building your business. Is this a hobby? Is this your passion? Is this your mission? And is this something that you really want to grow and have it be your vehicle for the fulfillment that you really want in your life? Because a lot of times people think of it as, I'm going after it so I can make more money. But I think for me, the money is a vehicle for me so I can have independence and I can do more for others. I saw a speaker by the name of Tim Story once, and he talks about this idea of breaking through, which resonated, but the next thing he said resonated even stronger. He's like, so I can pull through all the people then, that I can help. And that's something that really sits with me really strongly. And so if that's what you see as your purpose in business, be realistic about what your strengths are, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And I was working, I myself was in a position where I was so in the negative and so in debt that I wasn't even working from zero, because it would have been easy. It would have been a very easy investment to be like, okay, I need help, let's get it. So, don't do what I did. Ask for help sooner rather than later, and realize, where your strengths are. And if finances, if accounting is not your strength, like it is not for me, then partner with people who can help you move forward. Because if and when you do that, your business will grow exponentially further than it would have if you tried to continue to do this on your own. And I found that from like working with you on finances and working with people like Alex on how to think about scaling. Like, I'm just quickly realizing, like, if I want to get to where I want to be, both in my business and personal life, I need to have allies that can help me along the way, and let them kind of like just focus on their genius and do what they do best. And I think that's sort of like the collective 1 + 1 = 3.
Oh, that's a really good answer. I think it's really fascinating how each of us has our different approach to that, because there are some people who are very getting help oriented, like right out of the gate, or maybe even like, I'm going to pass a lot of this stuff in my business off. And then you have people, and I think you and I are pretty similar this way, which is we're very capable of learning how to do this stuff, like the ticky-tacky stuff. Like, I'll figure out a CRM system and I will manage it myself. There are plenty of other people who are like, I have no idea, someone else needs to implement that.
Yeah.
And one of the downsides to being, if you're capable, I'm interested in learning the kind of behind the scenes stuff as well as doing the client work and figuring out how to sell to people and all that, is that we can get so overloaded and we don't actually grow the way we want to grow because we are just in the weeds with all of it,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for taking the time and sharing those financial stories. It's not an easy thing. I hope everyone appreciates how honest Harry has been with us, and take it as encouragement that you too can spend a little time digging into this. And someday maybe we're going to be helpful, or not helpful. You'll be open to sharing with whoever you need to share with so that you can get where you want to be. But I appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for allowing me to share my story with your audience, as challenging as it's been. And I think there's sometimes a bit of shame when it comes to these topics. And I just encourage the listener to have the confidence that there are people there that are ready and willing to help you. You just have to ask for the help. And you'd be surprised at who comes to your need and who comes to help you when you make a genuine effort and extend that hand out and say, hey, I'm struggling here, I need help. And I've done it in all aspects of my life, even with therapy now. Every time I do it, Liz, it just reminds me that was the right decision to make. So definitely encourage people to do that. And if people need help with their podcast, I created a special PDF just for your audience.
Of course you did. That's awesome.
So if you go to fullcast.co/Liz, that should be the domain. We'll make sure that's set up by the time this episode goes live, and you can download the podcast game plan from there.
Awesome. Yeah, Harry has all kinds of great stuff. If you want to dive into this water, or if you've been doing it yourself and it's time to get a little bit of help, he's the right person to talk to. He has a great team. They are very proactive. I can't recommend them more. So thanks again, and we will talk to everybody soon.
Thanks, Liz.